This is AJ. Welcome back to another of my videos. If you're a new viewer, please consider subscribing. A wealth of content to come. Yeah, channel's young, growing it, so please hit that button down below. Okay, so today Paramount started streaming season 2 of Star Trek Lower Decks, which made me thinking, I don't know, I'd do a video having a look at all my Star Trek Blu-rays. Now this is only going to be Blu-rays, not DVDs. Come into that as well, I'll discuss that as the video continues. So let's get into it. Star Trek. Okay, so first up, from 1966 to 1969 ran Star Trek, the original series. So that is the box for season 1 with all your discs on the inside. Yeah, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, James Doohan, yeah, all the original cast. Obviously Chekhov wasn't in it at the very beginning. He was a later addition. And we have series 2. And series 3. So yeah, like I said, this ran from 1966 to 1969 when it saw it cancelled. Wonderful series. I remember watching it as a child. Used to be on TV. Yeah, even to this day now, it's you know, the cast are great. The interaction they have is great. The chemistry between all of them. It was a wonderful family of people on TV, and a joy to watch. So then after that came in 1973, which on 1973 and 1974, Star Trek, the animated series. Yeah, so this, in some people's eyes, this is their season 4, because it has the voice cast of the original crew came back. Yeah, animation was a bit different back then, the way it looked, but you know, it was fine. It was enjoyable. Nice to have that cast back again. We'll continue on with TV, and we'll come into the films after. Just where they are. Then, okay, so Star Trek: The Next Generation I do have, but I don't have it on Blu-ray. It's something I keep meaning to pick up, just never got around to it. I do have them all on DVD, as with Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager. But I do have Star Trek Enterprise Season 1 Blu-ray with a lovely embossed slip. Scott Bakula, former Quantum Leap star, played Jonathan Archer. This was like a prequel series set before Kirk. Season 2, again embossed case. Yeah, people were a bit critical of this series, but you know what? I really enjoyed it. It's not my least favourite Star Trek series, let's put it that way. Out of the older stuff, not the new. Discounting the new stuff from Discovery and that. With the older stuff, this is not my least favourite. I might do a ranking of the Star Trek series and discuss my thoughts. Yes, so yeah, not my least favourite of the old. I think people were just going off of Star Trek. They'd been burnt out because obviously The Next Generation had been on TV from 1987 to 1994. And before that ended in 93, Deep Space Nine started and ran till 1999 for 7 seasons. Then in 95, running concurrently with DS9, we had Voyager. Again, run for 7 seasons till 2001. And when that ended, we had Enterprise begin, and that was cancelled after 4 seasons, which was a shame. Scott Bakula was great in it. So season 3. And then season 4. Part of the criticism was the fact that obviously it was a prequel series. Now when you do a prequel series, you're always sort of trapped by the confines of what comes after, and you know what comes after. It did have a time travel element to it, with the Time Bureau sort of thing, and these aliens from the future invading the past. There was this sort of stuff going on here. I think towards its later years, it had more of a larger story run, as in a bigger narrative running through the series. But I had no issue with it. I really enjoyed it. I thought the ship looked lovely. The NX-01 Starship Enterprise. Yeah, it was, like I said, not my least favourite. So then, 2017, we were given Star Trek Discovery. Now this is, the Amore release. It's got a nice waxy feel to the, smooth waxy, almost waxy feel to the slipcase, which opens up and gives you a shot of the crew. Jason Isaacs there. It wasn't the best series. It was, the Klingons looked odd. They looked different. They went with a different look for them. They didn't look as good. The show had problems, let's just say that. It wasn't the greatest show. It had its own issues. I can understand why people don't particularly like it. It's a lot darker. It feels a lot different. It doesn't feel like Star Trek did, but obviously you need to change to try and keep things up to date. We have the Steelbook, still sealed, for season 1 of Discovery. Then we had season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, which was a vast improvement over season 1. Part of it because of the inclusion of Ensign Mount as Captain Christopher Pike, who was the original captain of the Starship. He was in the original pilot to the original Star Trek series. Not him as an actor, but the character, obviously. And he was wonderful. He lent a sort of gravitas to that role. He made that Captain Pike his own, and it had a wonderful story for that reason. He's getting his own series called Strange New Worlds, which I'm really looking forward to. So that was, and also that season, that box does open up and give you that image on the inside. So yeah, Ensign Mount, Captain Pike, wonderful. Then came season 2 of the Steelbook, so I did get the Steelbook of that as well. Now again, it had a lot of criticism, but they were clever with it in writing into the story, because a lot of the questions were, why, you've got this ship that can just instantly transport from here to here in space. Why have we never heard of this in the later Star Trek series and all this sort of thing? So the writers retroactively wrote this storyline for season 2, in which they covered that, and there was a reason why you've never heard of Spock's half-sister, a reason why you've never heard of the Discovery and all this sort of stuff, and to get out of the confines of being that show set in the past and people wanting a show that was set further in the future. With season 3, they actually jumped the show into the future and are keeping it there, so getting rid of all the questions and the niggles that people had, and not being confined by the restrictions of being a show set in the past. So yeah, then we did get Star Trek Picard, the return of Patrick Stewart as Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Brent Spiner returned as Data in it. Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis did make appearances in the show. We're currently waiting on season 2, which sees the return of John Delancey's Q. Again, it was a different series. It's, is it really good? I don't really know. I'd have to rewatch it. It was, it was lovely seeing Patrick Stewart back as that character. But the jury's still out on it, to be honest. The jury's still out on that show. We'll have to see with season 2. Then, again, I do have a Steelbook for it. Yeah, still sealed. Obviously, like I said, Lower Decks season 2 has just started. So I did import from America Lower Decks Season 1, Steelbook. Obviously this has been opened. It's in a protective thing. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was very funny. I got the humour. Yeah, I really enjoyed that animated series. Looking forward to watching season 2. And then I've got Blu-ray of Star Trek Lower Decks, which is a collection of shorts that were made to fill the void between like season 1 and season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. Yeah. Something shaking about in there. Let me take a look. Loose disc. Yeah, it's a copy of just one that I'd burnt of Star Trek Renegades, which was a fan-made Star Trek series, which saw the return of Walter Koenig's Chekhov. Yeah, it's a fan-made Star Trek thing. You can probably see it on YouTube. Yeah, but anyway, so now let's get into the Star Trek movies. So yeah, after the original series was cancelled, there was plans to do another series. It never came to pass, so they opted for doing the films, starting with Star Trek the Motion Picture. Now this was heavily influenced by, obviously Star Wars had been out and was big, and you had 2001 A Space Odyssey and that sort of thing. So the first Star Trek film we got, and this is a steelbook, was Star Trek the Motion Picture. Now all these steelbooks are still sealed, I will say that. I may do openings for them because I've never opened them. So yeah, obviously the return of the original crew, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, Forrest Kelly. This film looked great, but it was a slog. It was slow, it was boring. It took more of that 2001 A Space Odyssey approach. I'm not saying that's a boring film. I'm saying it's, you know, it's a very slow atmospheric film. This was a very slow but boring film. Yeah. Yeah, it's probably one of my least revisited Star Trek films. So that was in 1979. Now in 1982, to combat the boredom, we got Star Trek 2. This is still sealed, but it's like really, oh, look at that plastic on it, awful. Anyway, Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, steelbook. Directed by Nicholas Meyer. The film had a smaller budget, but you wouldn't believe it. You know, the uniforms were changed up. The uniforms now they look fantastic. Ricardo Montalban as Khan. This is the best Star Trek film to date. It's never been topped. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. It's the best submarine film ever made, because Nicholas Meyer treated it like it was a battle within submarines. James Horner soundtrack. I've got it on CD. A couple of standout scores within it are the Genesis countdown and the battle within the Mutara Nebula. Check those two out. They're fantastic James Horner scores for a fantastic film. Yep. Then we had Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Now everyone says that the odd Star Trek films are the rubbish Star Trek films. I think this is fantastic. I think it's a fantastic film. You know, obviously directed by Leonard Nimoy. Leonard Nimoy took a back seat in the acting because of his character being killed off at the end of Star Trek 2. So he isn't in this until right at the very end. Christopher Lloyd from Back to the Future plays the main Klingon. The main antagonist in the show, in the film. The destruction of the Enterprise, beautiful. Yeah, so that after that we got Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, which is probably the most famous Star Trek film of the old ones. it was big in the cinema. This is the one where it sees the crew travelling back in time for some humpback whales to save the future. The Enterprise isn't in the film. They are on board a Klingon warbird, which was great. So these three films actually form a trilogy. They're heavily thematic and story-wise run one into the other. Now, my opinion on these, I would actually say this is the better film than this. This is the easiest to digest for an audience, the most easily accessible Star Trek film for a non-Star Trek audience, because it's not set in the future, it's not set in space, majority of it's set on Earth in modern day or back in the 80s, but the problem with that, setting it in a time era, the time era of the time that it was, it was filmed, is that it becomes dated very quick, because you've got a time constraint on it. You go back, you see the clothes look dated, the vehicles look dated, and in turn it makes the film look dated. So when I've recently rewatched 2, 3 and 4 over a span of a couple of nights, I found this one to be far more enjoyable than this one. Not that this is a bad film, it's a very good film. It's a great Star Trek adventure, but I preferred the characters in this. I preferred the emotion around the death of Kirk's son, and the finding of Spock and all this. Over time, it would have been a couple of years ago, I would have put that one first, but now I would go with that one above that one. But nevertheless, both very, very good films. And it's a 3 and 4 were directed by Leonard Nimoy. Next, because of a little bit of jealousy, William Shatner, my mate Bill, felt that he had to, hey, I want to go directing one of these Star Trek films, so I'm going to direct Star Trek 5, Final Frontier. I remember seeing this at the cinema in 1989. A very busy year for films, very busy. Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2, License to Kill, Lethal Weapon 2. It was that summer was a mass of movies, and obviously this film couldn't compete. So this film sees Kirk and crew go on the search for the centre of the universe to find God. The concept was fine in the sense of a Star Trek concept. The execution was poor. I think it suffered from budget cuts. Their ideas were too big for what they could do. I can't really think of anything overly positive to say about the film. Again, I've not watched it for quite a while. It's not a film that I often revisit. But, But then, for their goodbye, we got Star Trek, The Undiscovered Country. Nicholas Meyer, who directed Star Trek 2, returned to the director's seat for Star Trek 6. So it was fantastic having him back. The story delved into prejudices, Kirk's distrust and hate for the Klingon Empire because of what happened to his son in part 3. So you're thematically reminded of those films. You've got Spock who wants peace between the Klingon Empire, but Kirk's, let them burn. Kirk and McCoy get accused of killing a Klingon diplomat. And they get imprisoned on Aurora Penthe, which is a ice planet. Obviously, they subsequently escape, and there's a big conspiracy. For the head of Starfleet, like itself, to be assassinated, and the Enterprise crew have to stop it. Kim Cattrall stars as, I forget her name. She's a Vulcan female in it. I believe she was meant to be the Vulcan that was in Star Trek, the same one that Kirstie Alley played in Star Trek 2, but they didn't go that way with it because of the changes in casting of that role. But yeah, it's, Sulu, you see him captaining the USS Excelsior, which is a ship that you did see in Star Trek 3 when Kirk steals the Enterprise after the events of Star Trek 2, which is a fantastic scene. Another reason why I like Star Trek 3, that scene where they steal the Enterprise and it's been taken out of the Starfleet head, the Starfleet base, which is like a mushroom. Fantastic. So yeah, a very, very good Star Trek film. It was the farewell to the original cast. It's got the end with all the signatures, much like what Endgame copied. Yeah, brilliant. So then we had the meeting of the two captains, Captain Picard and Captain Kirk, Star Trek Generations. Now this is a Star Trek Next Generation film. It was their first foray into the cinematic world of Star Trek after its 7-year season run of the series. Now, this film does get criticised heavily, but I love it. I think it's great. I think it's beautifully shot, the colours. I think that Kirk's death at the beginning is great. And in the context of the story, that is the death that history recalls for the captain. The meeting between the two captains at the end is fantastic. I had no issue with the way Kirk died on the bridge. It was a subtle death. It was quiet. It was, and only really Picard was the only one there to see it. Thematically, it's got, stuff about Picard's nephew dying, his brother, or this sort of stuff. Puts Picard in quite a dark place, obviously. It's a great film. Well worth seeing. Yeah. Anyway, then we had one of the biggest Star Trek Next Generation movies, First Contact, with the Borg. Yeah, fantastic film. I do like it. It's a good film. It's great seeing the Borg in there. I think some of the humour's out of place. It started to feel... This one felt cinematic. It felt a lot... It felt like a cinema film. Something about the way it was shot and the lighting and all this sort of stuff. With this one, it starts heading back into looking like a TV series, which is my only... Well, that and the humour is my only complaint about it. But it's a good film, don't get me wrong. It's a fantastic film. And after that, I got the Steelbook for Star Trek Insurrection. This was pretty much just a TV episode story. Again, one of my least revisited Star Trek films. Can't remember much about it at all. And with this one, this came out in 1998. And then 4 years later, in 2002, we got Star Trek Nemesis. This was the final film for the Next Generation crew. It saw the death of Data, but didn't see the death of Data. It was like they were too scared to actually do it, so that they had, is it B9 or B4? Whichever one it was, I can't remember now, long time. The other robot version of Data, you saw that potentially there was a spark of Data within him, so you knew Data wasn't dead. Come on, it was... if there was another film, Data would have been back. It was scared to do. It was scared. They bottled it, basically. They couldn't give you a satisfactory death for this character. It's just not, Tom Hardy plays the villain. He was good in it, young Tom Hardy, before he became big. But it's not a great film. Then I do have... I do have... the original motion picture collection. This is why these are all still sealed, because if I watch them like this. Containing all the first 6 films. Lenticular-y thing there. And I also have the one for the Next Generation films with a lenticular thing there. It has got a little bit of a hole in the plastic there. I think that was hit by a BB bullet. But yeah, so you can see that lenticular moving there. And you got some sort of lenticular there. So yeah, not done yet. Where are we now? Okay. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Blu-ray of the director's cut. Yeah, with a little bit of additional scenes in it. It does have the both the director's cut and the original theatrical release on there. Yeah, not a fan of that cover art at all. Don't think it's very good. Okay, so in 2009 we had the Star Trek reboot. We heard that they were rebooting Star Trek with the original crew, brand new cast. People were up in arms. I wasn't too happy. How could you recast that crew, you know, the original crew, and still have that same magic work? And you know what? They've done a really good job with it. So you had Christopher Pine, you had Zachary Quinto from who'd been known for being Heroes, and you had Judge Dredd, Carl Urban as in DeForest Kelly's role. So those are the three main ones, especially Spock and Bones, were fantastic, and Chris Pine done an acceptable job as Kirk, a young Kirk. This was a really enjoyable film. It surprised me. It was very good. It was you know, made a lot of money. It did turn Star Trek more into Star Trek though. It less on the philosophical and more on the action, that side of it. So, you know, it was an okay film. Then I have Star Trek Into Darkness, Steelbook. This is where the problems began, because let me get into it, and I have another Star Trek Into Darkness Steelbook. You had Benedict Cumberbatch cast. They tried to hide the fact that he was cast as Khan, but no one believed that he was cast as Khan. It was unfortunate that, you know, the makers felt like they have to try and remake or redo Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan again. You know, you already had it, and it was a perfect film. But let's go and remake it here and try and put a twist on it. The problem was that a lot of the, you know, in the original one, you had the emotional connection between Kirk and Khan, because it was a sequel to an original series episode called Space Seed. In this one, Kirk had never met Khan. He didn't know who he was from Adam. So the actual scene where Khan's in the cell and he goes, you know, my name is Khan, and like the music's all like ramped up and it's like dun dun dun, you know. It's like done for the benefit of the audience, not for the benefit of Kirk, because Kirk's just like, you know, Kirk just be like, who? You know, does that mean something to me? Is that meant to mean something? Do you know what I mean? Yeah, so, but Benedict Cumberbatch was great in the film. You know, the action was good in the film. The film looked fantastic. Bruce Greenwood returned. He played Captain Pike in the first two of these. I neglected to mention his name in the first one. Bruce Greenwood's a fantastic actor. I remember him from a TV series years back called Nowhere Man, but another story. But yeah, so, but I understand people's complaints. You know, you rework the death of Spock at the end to have it as the death of Kirk, but then straight away you brought him back with magical tribble blood, and then you had, you know, you had transporters in this that could transport someone like from Earth to the Klingon homeworld. You know what I'm saying? It's just ridiculous. You know, get rid of, you don't need starships anymore because you can transport from one side of the galaxy to the other like that. Yeah, it had a wealth of problems. I can watch the film. I can enjoy it, but you know, it's not Star Trek as Star Trek was. It's what people want Star Trek to be now, which is Star Wars. They want the action. And then last but not least, for the Steelbooks, we have Star Trek Beyond. Yeah, which was directed by, is it Justin Lin, who was one of the, he directed Fast and Furious films. There's also that scene in it where Kirk's on the motorbike. I think Chris Pine has it written into his contract that almost every film he's in, he has to have a scene on a motorbike. Yeah, I'm not joking with that. You know, you saw the destruction of the ship, which again, let's copy Star Trek 3, because in Star Trek 3, the original series, you had the destruction of the Enterprise. So at the start of this, they destroy the Enterprise, and then they're flying around on this older, they get this older starship, which looked nice. That was nice. It was very similar to the starship from Enterprise, the Scott Bakula ones. It was that style of a starship. So it was nice to see that, and that sort of small connection to that type of story. But yeah, not a great film. Yeah, it's got its moments. It's not a wonderful one. Now, obviously, they were very clever in the writing of these. You had a moment in time back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and around that sort of era, where they started remaking a lot of stuff, but they remade them sequels. Star Wars, you know. Put no bones about it, right? The Force Awakens is a remake of Star Wars, dressed up as a sequel, right? And that's what it is. Creed is a remake of Rocky, but cleverly dressed up as a sequel, and you get, you know, one of the historic characters into it to play a role. So in that it was Stallone, you know, Creed's a fantastic film. Star Wars, that Star Wars remake, not so much. But yeah, and with this, it was a remake, but again, they cleverly dressed. Where it is, they cleverly dressed it as a sequel, because you had the stuff with the older Spock going back in time and reordering the past and creating this new timeline. So story-wise, these do work within the continuity sort of the other Star Trek films. So it's very cleverly done, but it is a remake / sequel, and that's what they've done with all these sort of a lot of these remakes at the times. There are other you know, things I could point to that done it. Vacation, National Lampoon's Vacation, that was a remake, but a sequel, because it's now his younger family that's doing it, and so Chevy Chase pops up in it. Do you know what I mean? So they done it with a wealth of film, maybe not wealth, but a lot of them, that's what they started doing. Anyway, last but not least, I do have the 4K trilogy for the Kelvin Timeline films in its slipcase, and yeah. So, like I said, I do have the DVDs of Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. I may do a ranking of the TV series, and may do a ranking of the films as well. So, you know, do you enjoy these films? Tell me down below. Let's have a discussion about it. Tell me, what is your favourite Star Trek film? What's your least favourite Star Trek film? Do you prefer the Kelvin timeline over the original films? And what's your favourite TV series? Yeah, so again, please consider subscribing. Leave me a comment and I'll be sure to get back to you. Hit the notification bell and give me a thumbs up. So anyway, so this is AJ. I hope you enjoyed that video. Now I'm going to boldly go, and I'll leave you to it. Take care all. Goodbye.